The Arizona men's basketball program in the spotlight.
If you have any basketball question at all, I'll be more than happy to answer.
How a college town rebounds from the shakeup.
Kids come and go. This is a pretty strong place to watch basketball.
Plus insight into some of the charges in the case. This is Arizona Week. Hello, and thanks for joining us. The Arizona men's basketball program speaking publicly, but not saying very much about the federal investigation into an assistant coach.
And this is a tough situation. It's a little bit of adversity, but, it'll help us grow stronger and maybe bring us closer together.
I fully support the investigation into the allegations, and as that investigation proceeds, I'll continue to work hard to promote and reinforce a culture of compliance in our organization, just like I have for the last 8 years. And I'll also continue to work hard on bringing us here at the University of Arizona the most successful basketball season we can possibly have this year.
That's head coach Sean Miller insisting that he has no further comment on the FBI arresting a longtime assistant coach. Miller making the comments this week at the program's first media appearance. Next week, Miller and some of his players will be at Media Day in California for the start of the Pac-12 season. Last Tuesday, FBI agents arrested Emmanuel Book Richardson at his home here in Tucson. Richardson posted a $50,000 bond and is due to appear next week in New York. Here's a look at the charges facing Richardson: bribery, conspiracy, solicitation of bribes, honest services fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, travel act conspiracy. Now, this case led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The Bureau is not commenting directly on this investigation, but is here to explain what these terms refer to. For that, I'm joined by the Public Corruption Supervisor, the Tucson Residency Agency of the Phoenix FBI Office. Theo Callimanis is a Supervisory Special Agent. Theo, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
If you would begin, what is bribery?
Bribery, simplistically, is either the offering, solicitation, or acceptance of something of value, whether it be money, property, promise of a job, in exchange for an official misusing their position in an official act to get that person who's offering the bribe something that they want.
So the person has to have not necessarily that position of authority, but as you have said earlier, trust is involved.
A position of public trust, a public official, somebody who's either an elected official, an appointed official, somebody who's employed by a state, a local government, or the federal government.
Okay, what about fraud? How's that different?
Fraud's a little bit different in that when you have bribery, you usually have somebody who's accepting the bribe, an official, and somebody who's offering the bribe. It can be another official or not. With fraud, fraud can be a single person, and basically with fraud, simplistically, it's a deliberate lie to either unlawfully gain something or to defraud somebody or a victim out of something that's rightfully theirs. And the victim can either be an individual, it can be a company, or it can be the federal government, a state government. They can all be victims of fraud.
And when we hear the term corruption, does that umbrella over both those terms?
Corruption, what we look at, and from our standpoint when we talk about corruption, we're referring to an official who's misusing their position in violation of the law.
These are serious crimes. Do you think that most people understand the gravity of them or have a good understanding where they hear the words tossed around?
I would hope so. I know that some of them get a little bit more convoluted when you talk about fraud. Fraud's kind of a wide-ranging thing. It can be a very complex thing, it can be very simplistic. So I think people do have a general understanding of it. The most important thing for me is just for people to understand that when you're discussing public corruption, it's really something that to me is very important because it's an official just misusing that position of trust. So not only are they breaking the law, but they're using their official position, something that they should be held to a higher standard, and they're misusing that in furtherance of breaking the law.
You've been in charge of public corruption for some time here in Arizona.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what sorts of cases we have seen with proximity to the border. Is it fair to say that we see some of that here?
We do see quite a bit. The Tucson Resident Agency covers both Pima County and Santa Cruz County, so with that we have quite a large border. We get the traditional cases of public corruption that you would get in any other city or town in the United States with local police officers, local elected officials, judicial corruption. But in addition to that, we have the border, and because of the border, we have a really large population of law enforcement officers that are specifically tasked with protecting the border. Because we have that large number of officials, we do have a special issue with border corruption.
Okay, how long do these cases tend to take as you develop them? I mean, it can't be easy.
No, border corruption specifically, or corruption cases?
In general, let's go with corruption.
Okay, corruption cases can run the gamut. They can be very simplistic and very quick. It can be as simple as a police officer soliciting a bribe in exchange for allowing somebody out of a traffic ticket. And that case can be really simplistic and go quite quickly. It can also be something that can take years to prove. It could involve an official using their position to change laws, and in exchange they're being paid with money that had been laundered through multiple banks, and then they're being paid in something like foreign property. And something like that, which is a more complex scheme, would take us a lot longer to fully understand and to fully investigate.
These are pretty serious crimes. What are the penalties like for cases of bribery, fraud?
Bribery and fraud, they all have different statutory limitations, but they are quite serious cases. Anytime you take a public oath and you besmirch that oath and you take that and you're using it for your own personal gain, it is pretty serious. But there are statutory requirements based on how much money you are, if you're in a position of trust or not. So.
One of the things I've seen is that the FBI is now using social media to help in some of its cases, or seeking more information. Is that a new tactic?
It's relatively new, but we've been seeking the public's assistance for years with the FBI with our cases. I mean, with stuff like the 10 most wanted list that we put out there to get the public's assistance. This is just a modern platform of doing it. The quickest way to get information from people, or to get our information out there, is through social media. People check their phones 900 times a day. So by putting stuff on Twitter or Facebook, it's a good way to reach more people. So it's something that we do commonly use now.
It sounds like the FBI relies a fair amount on the public to help solve some of these cases.
Oh yeah, any help that we can get, whether it be from public or from our liaison network. So the public are the ones who we'd ideally like to get a lot of our cases from. Obviously, to start a case, there has to be some allegation of some wrongdoing, and if we can get that from the public, that is great. So we do rely heavily on that. We do a lot of outreach to try to get the public involved and let them know that if they do have an allegation of criminal violations, that they please let us know.
The Pac-12 season officially underway this week. For more on how the team rebounds from this situation, I'm joined by Steve Rivera from All Sports Tucson and Bruce Pascoe from the Arizona Daily Star. My thanks to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Steve. This press conference, the first time we've actually heard from the coach, and he stuck to his guns.
Well, he had to. I've said before that he has to say just enough to appease the fans and the media to get ready for the season, but not say enough for anybody to latch onto in the FBI world that we're in right now.
Bruce, could he have said anything that would have maybe opened the door to getting some sense of what's happening behind the scenes?
I think I think in this situation, it's just a really slippery slope, and I'm sure attorneys have briefed everybody involved on what they can say, and he can only say too much. And every time a question veered into that world over there, it was kind of brought back into, hey, we're excited about the season, and that's all he can say. And then secondarily, I think the university is concerned that people lose interest in this team and this season, because this is a really good team that could have Final Four implications, et cetera, but you've got this huge black cloud, and how do you address that? It's a difficult situation he's in, no question.
And Steve, this hasn't changed the numbers. I mean, Arizona continues to be one of the leading programs going into the basketball season.
Right. They're anticipated to be number 1 and number 2, top 5 at the very least. I asked Sean that question, and it's no pressure. It's the same status quo. You practice, you get ready for it, and we'll see what happens. Things could change between now and then in terms of players being available or whatever. We already know that Raleigh Alkins is out, and I don't think that's going to hurt their preseason, but we'll see down the road.
Bruce, you follow this closely, you both do, but if we do lose recruits, does that change the dynamic that we have going into the season?
Oh, not for this season, but absolutely for the future. I mean, Sean Miller's got a machine here of recruiting. I mean, he's got like 6, 7 top 5 classes in a row, and the current one for 2018 is on the verge of possibly falling apart, and that has huge implications down the road. But it won't really affect the current team. I think the biggest issue here with this current team is anybody going to be implicated and therefore ruled ineligible and have to sit out, or if it's retroactive, would anything be vacated or given up, as a result of any games that player played in? The other issue is, do they move fast enough that there's some sanctions that could affect this team? I tend to doubt it. I'm guessing with the lead time, any sanctions are going to be 18, 19 or beyond, but you never know.
Okay. Steve, you've authored several books on Arizona basketball. This is, for all intents and purposes, a college town. People are watching, waiting to see what happens. How have we built this dynasty to what it's become?
I anticipate another book from this. How have we built it? It's been 30 years in the making, since Luton '83 up until now. I mean, in those 30-some years, 30-plus years, there's only been a year or two that have been down. I don't think this is going to be a down year. Before this season started, before this actual thing started, this town was abuzz. They were ready for a great year, and a lot of them are already trying to get tickets to San Antonio. I think that's presumptuous, but it was a possibility, and still is.
Bruce, do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I think the thing is, I think Tucson has a lot to do with it. I think you've had some great coaching here, certainly, and great recruiting over the years, but you've got, this is a very unusual situation we have here. We have about 1 million people. This is the biggest team. There's no pro teams. Phoenix teams are far away. Some people care about them, some people don't. Some people are from somewhere else, they couldn't care less. But everybody's sort of adapted this team way back, in Fred Snowden days and on through Lute Olson and now. This team has always been a big part of the culture here, and because there's so much interest, recruits like to play here. I mean, and that it's sort of a self-sustaining type of thing. It keeps going. The kids come here for the Red-Blue game in October, and they see it sold out for practice. And one of the sales pitches that the coaches have is, "Hey, our practice is sold out. If you go to Washington State or something, they're going to be half full when we come and play them during the regular season." So it's a real appeal that the fans can bring, and it's sort of everybody's sort of working together. It's just we're in a little bit of a question mark here.
To be fair, though, can Arizona do any wrong in the eyes of the Tucson fans?
I don't think so. They are what they are. They're a good basketball team, have been that way for a long time, and they're going to support them. That's why this place has been sold out for a long time, and it will continue to be sold out. I don't think very many people are going to give up their tickets, at least not early. They're going to like this team.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see on that. I think that's probably true, but I think there's some skeptics out there, and I spend a lot of time on social media, and certainly it's more slanted there, but I see a lot of fans that are really upset and critical and maybe not going to go out there, but they'll probably watch the team. The question is going to be is if they struggle or something else comes out, or is there going to be booing, or some fans not going to go to some of these games. I mean, I remember, and Steve was probably there, in some of those transition years when they had interim coaches, I remember hearing boos in the stands, and it was like, what? Fans booing at McHale? You never heard that. So I think that's in people. I don't know whether we'll see it, though, this year or not.
Back then, they had bad teams. That transition was not a great time, the 2-3 years, but now they have a great team. And I say great, and that's a tough word to use, but it's, in this case, probably his most talented he's had here in his time here.
We haven't won a national championship in more than 20 years. Why, though, hasn't Arizona lost its luster? I mean, we've gotten close every season, it seems.
Why hasn't it? People just love those Wildcats. I think they like the players. They like the players, obviously, that come in and go, and you see them go, but they love this university. They're there because of the school, one, and then they're there because of the players, two. I've always said that. It's not like where you go to a pro team and if you like them, you don't, whatever. But this is the school-driven thing, and then the rest falls into place because the kids come and go. This is a pretty strong place to watch basketball.
Yeah, that said, I think there's an element of frustration that people have, that they've done really well, which has kept them engaged. Winning Pac-12 titles and doing all these other things and getting to these Elite Eight. So that's great stuff. But there's definitely I sense a frustration that they're not in the Final Four. But on the other hand, or won a national championship, but it's a one-and-out tournament, and it's a lot of things can happen, and that's happened to them. I remember back in 2011 when they went, and Derek Williams was telling us that a fan was complaining to him that his 1997 T-shirt was worn out, and I mean that's the thing. People are just waiting for that next one, but they've come. I think they've done close enough. They've come close enough, and they've recruited well enough, and they're entertaining enough that they've kept people's interest.
I think they could sell. You can get one on eBay pretty cheap.
For the non-conference. Oh, the
T-shirt.
The T-shirt. So the team is strong enough that it's not losing its luster.
Oh, no. This year, for sure. Pretty much, I would say for sure, maybe 90%. We'll have to see, like Bruce said, what's going to happen in the investigation if it involves anybody here. But it's going to take time.
Yeah, I mean, right. If there is projected to be, and that's the thing, that the last 4 or 5 years they've been consistently in the top 25, and that's going to bring people out. And when they were early in Sean Miller's first year, when they really struggled from all that transition and the recruiting damage, that it wasn't sold out here every time. That was, there was a lot of fans that stuck it through because they knew what was going on, and now they're seeing some rewards that this has happened. But we're also at a cliff here where it's like, where does it go from here? Is it going to get blown up, or is it going to recover from this?
And all this, the background that we have with Arizona basketball, it's built enough strength and dynamic in this program that it will rebound from this, or it has a capacity to.
Depends what happens. It's still we'll know in a few months. I think it's going to be a long time, and depends what happens to Sean. Right now he's not implicated in anything, but I'm sure he's involved in the investigation per se. This is not, the first story is not going to be the end story, and it's still way early in the game. If compared to a baseball game, it's in the second inning maybe of a 9-inning game.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to see what happens nationally, because you've got 4 assistant coaches who've been arrested. They're maybe going to talk to the FBI. Who knows if something else comes out of that? We could see, I've seen reports there could be 100 schools. Some people think there could be 100 schools implicated. There could be 20, 30, who knows? And if that happens, we're talking about maybe some major changes to the game. Where do they pay the players? Do they revamp the summer travel basketball system where the shoe companies have been involved? And through that process, that could long-term erode some fan interest away, I think. And it'll be interesting to see. Not maybe not here as much as some other cities, but college basketball attendance, other than Tucson and a few handful of places, has declined a little bit, and that's why they've been concerned about scoring, getting scoring higher, and this and that. And now they have this, and everybody's starting to wonder what's going on here. Is the whole game going to change now?
Okay, fair question to ask you guys. You've covered sports for so long now. Did this completely knock your socks off to the point where you were caught off guard?
I woke up on Tuesday morning when this came up, and I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't tell you why. I just couldn't believe it. And I said, this is going to be big. Made some calls right after I got the news early in the morning, and it was in fact true. And then I said, it's going to be bad. I don't know if it's going to be bad. There's going to be something. I mean, I don't know because I don't know, but it doesn't look good.
Well, yeah, I mean, college sports, there's always things that pop up, and they literally can happen anywhere. This program under Sean Miller has, not had any public things to this point. I think the thing that really struck me more than anything, it wasn't so much what happened, was that the FBI was finding out what happened. I mean, the FBI getting involved in this is astounding, really. I mean, usually have NCAA investigators who are talking to people and looking at some paper trail, but that's all they can do. You got the FBI setting wiretaps, videotaping. They got undercover agents. It's a whole different ballgame. And now, and I've been told, and I think this is probably true, a lot of these assistant coaches who were arrested probably knew, if it's true that they did what is said they did, they probably knew they were maybe they could risk their job. But I don't think anybody thought they could go to prison for this. And that's the thing that astounds me, is that we're talking about a whole different field here of what's going on.
Takes it to a whole new level. Exactly. Okay, thanks so much. And that concludes our coverage of Arizona athletics. Arizona Public Media will continue to follow the story and bring you information on programs and online. On to different news now. The Mexican Baseball Fiesta in its 7th year now, a 4-day event bringing the Mexican Baseball Winter League to southern Arizona. I'm told it's the equivalent of Major League spring training here in the U.S. This week, there are 8 Mexican teams in Arizona, hundreds of players and thousands of fans. The teams have played in Nevada, California, Texas, and this week they're right here in Arizona, with games in Douglas, Nogales, Phoenix, and yes, of course, Tucson. The program breathing new life into Keno Sports Complex. Here's Francisco Gamez, a former major leaguer behind the Mexican Baseball Fiesta.
So we have a very good prospects. We have also veteran players that want to go back to the big leagues. We have a lot of this year, it went up the imports that each team can have. So it used to be 6, now we have 8 on each team. So we have people from major league organizations to come and play and getting ready for their next year. And hopefully some of them, they're free agents, so hopefully get a contract for next year.
Tell me about how Mexican baseball has really given Kino Sports Complex a new life, because you used to play here too.
I think Mexican Baseball Fiesta, after the Diamondbacks left and the White Sox left, it was more on the amateur side. You know, it was the kids playing here, and that was really good. But since 2011, with Mexican Baseball Fiesta, we have professional baseball every year since then. We have the Tucson Padres here for 3 years, but they left also in 2013, 2014. So Mexican Baseball Fiesta has brought Kino Sports Complex the professional and the best level of playing here in Arizona.
What does it say to you when this sport has grown and is gaining some cultural influence too in this community?
My idea was to have the people who cannot go back to Mexico, or they're from Mexico living here for a long time, and it's difficult for them to go, but they're followers, or the Naranjeros or Yaquis, who are the cities closest to Tucson. As we were really surprised, and we are surprised every year, how many people from Mexico come in and see those games. They want to see their teams playing. So that's where we got to start growing and promoting the city, promoting the complex, promoting this year for the first time we're gonna have all the games of Hermosillo broadcast to Mexico. So last year we did 2. This year we're going to do 10. So all 4 here in Tucson will be broadcast to Mexico, to 15 states. So we every year we're trying to incorporate something new.
A lot of people think that Americans love baseball, or baseball is America's pastime. That's not necessarily true then.
No, Sonora, Sinaloa, Baja California, Chihuahua, the northern states in Mexico, they are baseball fans, and you can see we have that see that in the border towns. Nogales, we have playing on both sides, and how people goes to the games and just waiting for these games. This year, Douglas, 3 years ago, Agua Prieta, San Luis this year was it was packed stadium. There were little stadiums, but it was a good feel for the professional players to play, and you can see in the rosters in the big leagues now you got probably half and half, American players with Latin players. A lot of people from Mexico that is playing baseball, especially in the north part of Mexico.
The Mexican Baseball Fiesta pumps more than $1 million into Arizona's economy over the course of 3 weeks. The organization says more than 1,000 hotel rooms are booked for the event. The games draw people from both sides of the border, and it's about more than the fans. It's the players who get a chance to finesse their skill. Luis Soho spent more than 10 years in the major leagues, including stints with the Seattle Mariners and the New York Yankees. He now coaches Los Mochis Cañeros from Sinaloa. I caught up with him during batting practice at Kino Sports Complex.
Well, that's my life. I mean, baseball, since I was a little guy, I never thought I was going to make it, but, to be able to teach these young guys how to play the games, and, Cañeros gave me the opportunity 2 years ago. This is my 3rd year with the team, and, I mean, it's a blast. I mean, I love it. I love what I'm doing, and hopefully I can continue to do it until I get older, much older.
Tell me about these guys. We have some Mexicans, we have some other Latin American countries, we have Americans too, no?
Yeah, winter ball is like that. I mean, we got a lot of course, a lot of Mexican guys, and the imports, there's American guys, and we have some Cubans and Dominican players, which is a good combination. Baseball is international, so our front office do a very good job to bring those guys and try to make the best team that we can possibly have. I mean, last year we made to the final. Unfortunately, we don't win the championship, but this year I think it's going to be different.
You have Americans who have never been to Mexico, don't speak Spanish, but here they are, and now this is how they get to play.
We have 3 guys who never been in Mexico before, I don't think. But they figure it out. They're going to enjoy the food, which is Mochis have a great food. I mean, we love it over there, and then it's our job to help them out and where to go, where to eat, how to spend time over there, and they're going to have a blast.
What's the goal for some of these guys? Is it to get into the major leagues or just to have fun playing baseball?
Well, some are. We got a lot of young guys that played for affiliate in the United States, and a lot of the Mexican guys played in summer league in Mexico and in Winterborn and at this time. And also we had this prospect, Mitch Warding from the Phillies, playing AA this year. Hit 22 homers, 25 homers. And this kid got a good potential to become a major leaguer in a couple of years.
What's it like for some of these guys when you can watch them develop or maybe heal while they're enjoying what they do?
Well, these guys, they got a job to do. I mean, they gotta prepare, they gotta work hard every day, which they do that every single day. I mean, we're here in Arizona for 8 days, but we start off the spring training back in Mochis like 15 days ago. So we've been working out for a long, long time. So these guys, our goal is to get them ready for the season, which they're getting very close.
What is your pitch to people who haven't come to a game before and are thinking, hey, maybe I should enjoy some baseball?
They will. They're going to see a Latin tradition. I mean, I think it's great for this league to bring teams to Arizona and to do the Mexican festival. That shows how big this league grown up every year, and to bring it to the United States and Arizona especially, they're going to see a winter ball teams play in this area. I think it's going to be great for the fans.
It should be noted, these guys are good. I mean, they're not people who are just trying to get to a place. I mean, they actually have some firepower.
We got some very good players. You know, make it to the big leagues is really hard. I mean, all these guys over here at some point had the dream to play in the big leagues. Unfortunately, they didn't make it, but they had a lot of potential. I mean, if you put it this way, it's only like 1,500 big leaguers in the world, and I don't know how many players all over the world. But this guy, at some point, had a dream to make it in the big league.
Earlier you said that this is an international sport. For a lot of us in America, we think this is America's pastime. It's not.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, because if you're in Venezuela, you say this is a national pastime. If you're in Cuba, it's the same thing. You're in Puerto Rico, it's the same thing. You're in Japan, people love baseball. Mexico is not the number one sport is soccer. Now, baseball is growing up so much in this country, and people love it. So I think, like I say, baseball is international, and the main thing is to bring a very good show tomorrow so that people have a good time.
And the games are this weekend. If you'd like to see a schedule, check our website, azpm.org. And that's our program. Next week, Arizona Public Media's Nancy Montoya will be here and featuring reports from south of the border. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us.